Dying sergeant's life hangs by a thread. Then his K9 German Shepherd works a miracle. The flickering street lamp cast uncertain shadows across the rain-slicked pavement of Monroe Street, its dim light barely penetrating the darkness of the narrow alley where Detective Jake Harrison lay bleeding. The cold November air bit at his exposed skin, but he could barely feel it over the searing pain in his abdomen. His breath came in short, ragged gasps, creating small clouds that dissipated into the night air. Beside him, Rex, his German Shepherd partner of 6 years, whined softly and pressed his warm body against Harrison's side. The dog's intelligent brown eyes never left his handler's face, reading the pain and fear written there as clearly as any human could. "It's okay, boy," Harrison whispered, his voice trembling as he reached up to scratch behind Rex's ear. "You're a good boy." The simple act of lifting his arm sent waves of agony through his torso, and he bit back a groan. The bullet had caught him just below his vest, a lucky shot from one of the drug runners they'd been tailing. Or maybe not so lucky. These guys had known exactly where to wait for him. Harrison's thoughts grew fuzzy around the edges as he tried to piece together how everything had gone so wrong. The investigation into the Riverside cartel had been going smoothly, too smoothly, he realized now. Someone had tipped them off, and they'd been waiting when he and Rex had followed their latest lead down this godforsaken alley. His radio lay shattered several feet away, destroyed by the same burst of gunfire that had caught him in the side. His phone was in similar condition, and backup had no idea where he was. He deviated from his planned route to follow a hunch, a rookie mistake that might cost him his life. Rex's ears suddenly pricked forward, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Harrison tensed, fighting against the wave of dizziness that threatened to overwhelm him. Had the shooters come back to finish the job? "Rex," he whispered, "protect." It was all he could manage, but it was enough. The German Shepherd immediately moved into a defensive position, his muscled body coiled and ready to attack anyone who might threaten his partner. But after a moment, Rex's posture changed. The growl died in his throat, and his ears swiveled, catching sounds that Harrison's human ears couldn't detect. The dog looked back at his handler, then toward the street, then back at Harrison again. There was an almost human-like calculation in those deep brown eyes. "Go," Harrison managed to say, understanding what Rex was thinking. "Go get help." Rex hesitated, torn between his training to never leave his handler and the desperate need to find assistance. Harrison could see the conflict playing out in his partner's body language, the slight tremor in his muscles, the way his tail hung low but determined. "Go," Harrison commanded with what little strength he could muster. "Find help." With one last whine, Rex sprang into action. The German Shepherd's powerful legs carried him swiftly down the alley, his black and tan coat disappearing into the darkness. Harrison watched him go, fighting against the encroaching darkness at the edges of his vision. His last conscious thought was a prayer that his faithful partner would find help in time. Officer Sarah Chen was just finishing up her patrol of the business district when she heard the scratch of claws on pavement and a familiar bark. She turned to see a large German Shepherd running toward her patrol car, and her heart jumped into her throat. She recognized Rex immediately. The K9 unit wasn't so large that its members didn't all know each other, and she knew with certainty that something was terribly wrong. Rex skidded to a stop beside her car, barking urgently. His fur was damp from the light rain, and there was something dark staining his chest that made Chen's blood run cold. "Rex? Where's Detective Harrison?" she asked, already reaching for her radio. Rex barked again and took a few steps in the direction he'd come from, then looked back at her expectantly. Chen didn't hesitate. "Dispatch, this is Officer Chen. I have Detective Harrison's K9 partner Rex here without his handler, requesting immediate backup and medical support to follow. Rex appears to be trying to lead me to something, possibly Officer Down. Copy that, Officer Chen. All available units responded. Can you provide a location? Corner of Monroe and 12th, heading. She looked at Rex, who was becoming increasingly agitated. Stand by for a location update. Following the K9 now, Chun followed Rex as he led her through the maze of downtown streets. The German Shepherd moved with purpose, occasionally looking back to make sure she was still following. They turned down an alley that Chun might have missed if she'd been searching on her own, and there she saw him. "Officer Down!" she shouted into her radio, rushing to Harrison's side. "Detective Harrison is down with a GSW to the abdomen. Send immediate medical support to the alley off Monroe between 11th and 12th. She dropped to her knees beside her fallen colleague, quickly assessing his condition while Rex pressed close, whining softly. Harrison's pulse was weak but present, his skin cold and clammy to the touch. Chun pulled off her jacket and pressed it against the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. "Stay with me, detective," she murmured, even though she wasn't sure he could hear her. "Help is coming. Your boy Rex did good. He did real good." The next few minutes seemed to stretch into hours as Chen maintained pressure on the wound and monitored Harrison's vital signs. Rex never left his partner's side, his body trembling with nervous energy but maintaining his post as guardian. When the paramedics finally arrived, they had to work around the protective dog, who refused to be more than a few feet from his handler. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast harsh shadows across Dr. Emily Martinez's face as she studied the patient charts in front of her. Detective Jake Harrison had been lucky. The bullet had missed his major organs by millimeters, but he'd lost a dangerous amount of blood. The next 24 hours would be critical. She looked up as a commotion erupted in the hallway outside the ICU. A large German Shepherd was attempting to push past an orderly, with a harried-looking police sergeant trying to hold him back. "I'm sorry, Doctor," Sergeant Mike Walsh said, struggling with Rex's leash. "He's been like this since they brought Harrison in. Won't eat, won't rest. I've never seen him this agitated." Dr. Martinez had worked with enough police officers and military personnel to understand the unique bond between handlers and their K9 partners. She'd also read enough studies about the positive effects of animal presence on patient recovery. "Let him in," she decided. "Just for a few minutes." Walsh looked surprised but relieved. "You heard the doctor, Rex. Best behavior now." Rex padded silently into the room, his nails clicking softly on the linoleum floor. He approached Harrison's bed slowly, nose twitching as he processed the unfamiliar hospital smells. When he reached the bedside, he gently rested his head on the mattress, eyes fixed on his handler's face. The monitors showed a slight but noticeable improvement in Harrison's vital signs. "Well, would you look at that?" Dr. Martinez murmured, making a note in the chart. "Looks like someone's got the best medicine of all." The next few days passed in a blur of pain medication and fitful sleep for Jake Harrison. Every time he surfaced to consciousness, he was aware of a warm presence at his side. Sometimes it was Rex, sometimes it was his sister Kate who had flown in from Boston, but he was never alone. On the fourth day, he woke up feeling more clear-headed than he had since the shooting. Rex was there, as always, and so was Captain David Turner, his commanding officer. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Detective," Turner said, his gruff voice carrying an undercurrent of relief. "You gave us quite a scare." Harrison tried to speak, found his throat too dry, and gratefully accepted the water Kate held to his lips. "The shooters," he managed to ask. "We got them," Turner assured him. "Your hunch about the warehouse was right. After you were shot, we did a full sweep of the area, found enough evidence to bring down half the Riverside operation. And you'll be interested to know that we also found our leak." Harrison's eyebrows rose questioningly. "Detective Matthews," Turner said, his face darkening. "He'd been on their payroll for months. We found the transfers when we started digging. He's the one who tipped them off about your surveillance. Harrison closed his eyes, processing this information. Steve Matthews had been on the force for 15 years. They'd worked cases together, shared meals, attended each other's cookouts. The betrayal stung almost as much as the bullet had. But enough about that for now, Turner said, seeing the pain on Harrison's face. The doctor says you're going to make a full recovery thanks to this hero right here. He reached down to pat Rex, who had perked up at the attention. Officer Chen told us what happened, Kate added, running her fingers through Rex's fur. How he found her and led her right to you. The doctor said if he hadn't. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Harrison reached out to his partner, ignoring the pull of the stitches in his side. Rex immediately moved closer, pressing his head into Harrison's hand. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "The best boy." The next few weeks were a struggle of physical therapy and painful recovery. Harrison had to rebuild his strength from the ground up, and there were days when the pain and frustration seemed overwhelming. But through it all, Rex was his constant companion, his furry shadow and biggest supporter. The German Shepherd seemed to instinctively know when Harrison needed encouragement during his therapy sessions, providing a steady presence to lean on. Sometimes literally. When the work became difficult, he would pace alongside Harrison during his prescribed walks around the hospital floor, matching his stride to his handler's slower gait, ready to brace him if his strength failed. The hospital staff had long since given up trying to enforce the usual restrictions on animals in the facility. Rex had become something of a mascot in the recovery ward, bringing smiles to the faces of other patients and their families. Dr. Martinez had even written a paper about the positive effects of his presence on Harrison's recovery speed. "You know," Kate said one evening as she watched her brother slowly making his way down the hospital corridor with Rex at his side, "I never really understood before." "Understood what?" Harrison asked, pausing to catch his breath. "Why did you choose this life? The risks you take, the danger you put yourself in. I always thought you were crazy for leaving the private sector to become a cop." She smiled softly. "But watching you and Rex together, seeing how many lives you've touched, how many people you've helped, I get it now." Harrison looked down at his partner, who gazed back at him with unwavering devotion. "It's not just about catching bad guys," he said. "It's about trust, loyalty, making a difference. Rex and we're a team. He's not just a dog. He's my partner in every sense of the word." "He's family," Kate corrected gently. "And so are all the other officers who've been in and out of here checking on you. You've built something special here, Jake." Harrison nodded, thinking about the constant stream of visitors he'd had over the past weeks. Fellow officers, dispatch operators, even the barista from the coffee shop near the precinct who always saved Rex's favorite treats for him. They were all part of his extended family, bound together by bonds of service and shared purpose. 2 months after the shooting, Harrison stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie. His dress blues felt a little looser than they had before. He still hadn't gained back all the weight he'd lost during his recovery, but they were immaculate. Beside him, Rex sat perfectly groomed, his coat gleaming under the bathroom lights. "Ready for this, partner?" Harrison asked, giving himself one final inspection in the mirror. Rex's tail thumped against the floor in response. The ceremony at City Hall was packed with police officers, city officials, and members of the public. Harrison sat in the front row with Rex at his feet, listening as Mayor Anderson spoke about bravery, dedication, and the unique bond between police officers and their K-9 partners. "Today, we honor not just extraordinary bravery, but extraordinary loyalty," the mayor said, gesturing to where Rex sat at attention. "In our darkest moments, heroes can come in unexpected forms. Sometimes they have 4 legs and fur, but their courage and dedication are no less remarkable." Harrison felt his throat tighten as Rex was called forward to receive the department's Medal of Valor, the first time it had ever been awarded to a K-9 officer. The German Shepherd walked proudly beside him to the podium, accepting the attention with characteristic dignity. As the mayor draped the medal around Rex's neck, Harrison couldn't help but think about how far they'd come. The long hours of training, the countless patrols, the dangerous situations they'd faced together. Every moment had built the trust and understanding that had saved his life that night in the alley. After the ceremony, as they made their way through the crowd of well-wishers, Harrison caught sight of Officer Chen standing with her own K-9 partner, a young Belgian Malinois named Storm. "Congratulations," she said, smiling warmly. "Although I think Rex is taking all this attention more calmly than some of our human officers would." Harrison laughed, watching as Rex accepted gentle pats from a group of admiring children. He knows it's just another day on the job for him. The medal is nice, but all he really wants is to be out there working. "Speaking of which," Chen said, her expression turning serious, "word is that you've been cleared for duty next week. Are you ready to get back out there?" Harrison looked down at his partner, who had returned to his side and was watching him with those intelligent brown eyes. The scar on his abdomen twinged slightly, a reminder of how close he'd come to losing everything. But there was no fear in his heart, no hesitation about returning to duty. Not with Rex by his side. "More than ready," he replied. "We both are." That night, as Harrison prepared for bed, Rex took up his usual position on the floor beside him. The Medal of Valor hung on the wall alongside Harrison's own commendations, catching the light from the bedside lamp. "You know something, Rex?" Harrison said softly, reaching down to scratch his partner's ears. "I used to think I rescued you from that shelter 6 years ago. But the truth is, you've been rescuing me every day since." Rex's tail thumped against the floor, and he pressed his head more firmly into Harrison's hand. In the quiet of the night, the handler and dog shared a moment of perfect understanding. They were more than partners, more than friends. They were family, bound by something deeper than words could express. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases to solve, new wrongs to right. But together, they were ready for whatever came their way. Because true heroes come in all forms, and sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not in moments of triumph, but in dark alleys when all hope seems lost. As Harrison drifted off to sleep, he felt Rex's steady presence beside him, a constant guardian in the night. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that as long as they had each other, there was nothing they couldn't face together.